From the 13th century, the Ottomans dominate the Muslim world. Constantinople, known today as Istanbul, becomes the epicenter of power. In the 16th century, the Ottoman dynasty reached its peak under the reign of an extraordinary sultan, Suleiman the Magnificent. At the time, it was the most populous city in the world, a crossroads between East and West. Like all the powerful rulers, Suleiman the Magnificent ordered the construction of a monumental mosque in his honor, the Süleymaniye, a symbol and reminder of the Ottoman Golden Age and its most illustrious sultan. The Süleymaniye is today one of the most important monuments in the history of sacred Muslim architecture. Every Friday, the mosque attracts large crowds for the Great Prayer. Prayer is the only ritual celebrated in all mosques. No other ceremony, be it marriage or burial, may take place there. To build his mosque, Suleiman the Magnificent chose a strategic location, the top of a hill overlooking the city and the Bosphorus, with the European and Asian banks on each side. A symbol for what was nicknamed the Sultan of Two Lands and Two Seas.
Suleiman the Magnificent was about 50 years old when he decided to build the Süleymaniye and its complex. Up until this age, he spent most of his time on horseback, having conquered a vast empire that went from the Balkans to Central Europe and Hungary to the gates of Vienna. And then after he turns 50, he decides to make his empire. But he also wants to mark the glory of Islam, and so he builds this mosque.
The construction of this mosque is also explained by a practical necessity. Constantinople, more and more populated, desperately lacks space of worship to welcome all the worshippers. But for Suleiman the Magnificent, the challenge is also to compete with the splendid Basilica of St. Sophia. The Byzantine masterpiece was a seat of Eastern Christians until the capture of Constantinople in 1453 by Sultan Mehmed II. Overwhelmed by its beauty, the sovereign conqueror forbids its destruction. However, the building was immediately converted into a mosque. But despite its conversion, St. Sophia remained a cumbersome symbol of the city's Christian past.
The power of Byzantium was embodied by Saint Sophia. That is why, after the conquest of the city, all the sultans had their own mosques built in an attempt to downgrade Saint Sophia to demonstrate their strength. We see a continuous effort to surpass the power of Saint Sophia's architecture.
It is the chief sovereign architect, Mimar Sinan, who will set about the task of creating a building that would eclipse St. Sophia. He will make it a personal challenge and will meet it with brilliance, and thus will be remembered as the master of Ottoman Islamic architecture. The mosque's archive library holds a unique book, a book of calligraphy written during Sinan's lifetime that tells his story.
Written entirely by hand, at Sinan's request just before his death, this book occupies a very important place in Ottoman history. It offers us information about Sinan's whole life, his vision of things, his relationship with Sultan Suleiman, and even their disputes and the Sultan's threats.
In this text, Mimar Sinan says that at 23, he was snatched from his family by representatives of the Sultan. This was a fate of many young Christians of the time who were forcibly converted to Islam. With the status of slaves, they were integrated into a special order, that of janissaries. They received an education and could later occupy high positions in the army or in the administration. For Mimar Sinan, now chief architect, the construction of the Süleymaniye Mosque is the crowning achievement of his career.
The Sultan, how fortunate, ordered me to build him a beautiful mosque. After renovating his old palace, I began the foundations of the Süleymaniye. In this monument, Mimar Sinan worked with the most famous craftsmen of his time. He tried to achieve perfection. For every detail, he chose the best workers and artists available for the construction of this building.
Seeking to satisfy the Sultan's impatience to have his mosque the largest and most sumptuous possible, Mimar Sinan does not hesitate to bring exceptional materials from the four corners of the empire or to strip older sacred monuments.
As the stones were sought from unique sites, be they shrines or temples, it is probable that there was a sacred dimension that was intended. It is hoped that somewhere the mana of the ancestors or divinities who protected this temple will protect the mosque.
Among the different columns, we notice some of marbled red, the imperial color of excellence. They are the porphyry, a material much harder than marble and whose only known mine had been exhausted by the ancient Romans. Fascinated by this material that they didn't know how to work with, the Ottomans brought these columns from distant cities like Baalbek in Lebanon or Alexandria in Egypt. According to them, these columns had a supernatural origin.
There are texts that tell of the magical dimension that these pieces of porphyry had in the imagination of the sultans and the people. The porphyry columns came from mountains on which giants worked, and they used to pour water into molds, and then place plants that colored the stone when it solidified. And indeed, when we look closely at the porphyry, we see these veins and these reflections of very different colors.
But beyond these exceptional materials, it is, above all, the structure of the mosque that shows the genius of Mimar Sinan. The great architect innovated by adapting his architecture to the needs of the Muslim faith, which requires large open spaces for prayer. Its objective, to furnish the interior with a minimum of columns and thus give the sensation of a spacious and open expanse.
This feeling of elevation is extraordinary. When you enter this mosque, you immediately feel this elevation. There is an extraordinary light with a lot of windows and very colorful stained glass that give this clarity.
138 windows spread natural light inside the Süleymaniye. The stained glass windows, made with glass from Venice, are often blue or bright red, accentuating the white of the stones. To perfect the lighting of his mosque, Mimar Sinan also installed hundreds of oil lamps, replaced today by electricity. The soot from the lamps could blacken the walls and damage the decorations. Sinan then set up an ingenious air circulation system. According to records, to test his invention, the great architect requisitioned workers by asking them to smoke the hookah in the mosque. The smoke was drawn through chimney ducts to high rooms where it was deposited on the walls. It was then recovered and reused.
Soot from the candles was scraped off the wall. collected in boxes, and mixed with water and spices to make ink. This ink was then attached to the necks of camels leaving for Mecca or Medina, the sacred ground. Shaken during the outward and return journey, this ink finally obtained the right consistency. Then it was used to write the Qurans or for calligraphy.
This high-quality ink was given by the Sultan to the best calligraphers of the empire. In this small school on the banks of the Süleymaniye, a few devoted enthusiasts perpetuate this ancestral art.
All Muslims, when looking at history, understand the importance of the art of writing. Because at the heart of Islam is the book cherished by all Muslims, the Quran. So calligraphy is a tool, or a search to perfect the writing, a quest for refinement. That is why calligraphy is at the same time a message, a letter, a painting, and an art.
Examples of this art can be found on the walls of the Süleymaniye. Human and even animal representations are forbidden in Islam. Therefore, calligraphy occupies a central place in the decoration of mosques. The Ottomans have become masters of this art.
It was a time when printing did not exist. People had no Qurans. The presence of verses and important comments in mosques filled this gap, allowing the followers to read these texts.
Both inside and outside, calligraphy thus recalls the main verses of the Quran and the main rules of Muslim worship.
First, we must detach ourselves from worldliness, and for that, there is the ritual of ablutions. We do not wash ourselves because we are dirty, but to clean ourselves spiritually, symbolically. For example, when we've spoken badly to someone, we have the opportunity of correcting our mistakes by cleaning our mouth 3 times. And in the same way, if we hear calumnies and our ears are polluted, we wash our ears.
Ablutions are an obligatory passage for all Muslims. It is impossible to pray in the mosque without first being purified. Even today, the Süleymaniye is frequented daily by thousands of Istanbul faithful. Mimar Sinan succeeded in constructing such a building in only 7 years. The architect had no other choice, so strong was the pressure of Suleiman the Magnificent. The Sultan wanted to see his mosque finished before he died, and above all, he did not want to lose face before the Shah, his great Persian enemy. A legend bears witness to their rivalry.
It was said that Suleiman the Magnificent could not finish his mosque because he lacked money, and therefore the Ottoman Empire was weakened. In order to humiliate Suleiman, the Shah of Iran sent a chest full of jewels, precious stones, diamonds and sapphires, saying that Suleiman only had to sell them to finish building his mosque. And this greatly annoyed Suleiman the Magnificent, who gave the box to Mimar Sinan, saying, "Take it and do what you want." And this is how the architect then mixed the jewels into the mortar prepared for the construction of a minaret. When sunlight touches the minaret, it shines brighter than others, and is still called the Minaret of Jewels today.
Legend or reality, this story bears witness to the centuries-long rivalry between the Ottoman Empire and the Persian Empire.